Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Ventura County APCD, June 23rd. It's a little past 1:30. We'll have the roll call, please.
Board Member Bennett.
Here.
Board Member Foy. Board Member Long. Board Member Morgan. Board Member Parks.
Here.
Board Member Sharkey. Board Member Tucker. Board Member Zaragoza.
Here.
Board Member Ramirez.
Here.
And Board Member Pollock's here also.
That's who you are.
I apologize, that's missing from my...
We're not alphabetical for some reason, beyond me. So we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And Member Sharkey, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Moving on, the minutes are here. Are there any objections, corrections? Is there all in favor? Anyone opposed? No. They are approved. Agenda review. Consider and approve by majority vote any revisions to board items. Are there any such revisions?
Nope.
So we will proceed with the, can we have the agenda approved, please? Is there a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Public comment. I do have a public comment card. It looks like it's general comment, so I will call Donald Price forward. Thank you. Mr. Price, you have, is it 5 minutes? Yes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Ramirez, members of the board. My name is Don Price. Some of you may remember me as an engineer for the district, now retired. I see on your agenda that later in a closed session you will be discussing negotiations for a new district office building. I think that's great, long overdue. My purpose here today is to encourage you to make that new building a high-efficiency, LEED certified building. Air districts with high-efficiency buildings are nothing new. The South Coast Air Quality Management District building in Diamond Bar is high-efficiency, and a Santa Barbara Air Pollution Control District, Casa Nueva building, has won energy efficiency awards. Right now, the Ventura District website is featuring a short video on a LEED operation and maintenance certified building here in Ventura. What I'm recommending for the district is a LEED version 4 building design and construction certification at the gold or platinum level. It is true that current 2013 California Energy Commission Title 24 standards for building energy efficiency are very stringent. These standards ensure that all new buildings are built to a high level of energy efficiency. But there are a number of things that Title 24 does not cover, and LEED does. These include transportation management and green vehicles, site rainwater management, site management and outdoor use of water through landscaping, green power and carbon offsets, renewable energy production, recycling, construction waste management, indoor air quality, and green cleaning. A number of these attributes lead to another possible goal, zero net energy. By 2030, all California new commercial construction will be zero net energy. This means that after the most energy efficient building possible is built, the remaining energy requirements are met with renewables. Another benefit, of course, is a huge reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. So why would you support this? Aside from reducing emissions, to save money. It will cost a bit more to design and build a LEED certified building, but the potential for reduced or zero energy costs over the life of the building are huge. Also, the building will be worth more in future years, particularly in a market after 2030 when zero net energy is required. energy efficiency benefits add value and become a selling point. I'm here today before you today because projects like this don't succeed without strong support from the top, from you. I hope you will agree that one of the premier environmental agencies in the county deserves a building that demonstrates the maximum amount of environmental awareness currently available. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no other speaker cards, so we'll move on to board comments. Does any member have any comment?
I just want to thank the gentleman for taking time of his time to come and talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I concur. Thank you. On to no other board comments. We'll go on to consent agenda. Review and approve the items. I'd like to ask if any member would like any item pulled from the consent agenda.
Move approval of 9 and 10.
Second. Do we need a roll call on that? No. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Those items are approved. On to our regular agenda. First item, item 11, is public hearing regarding the adoption of Ventura County Air Pollution Control District's final fiscal year 2015-2016 budget. Mr. Villegas.
Chair Ramirez, members of the board, I'm Mike Villegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. Good afternoon. This will be a little shorter than the overview of the budget we went through on June 9th. The bottom line is, excluding $300,000 for contingency, the district is looking at a net cost of $410,000 in fiscal year 15-16. But as in past fiscal years, we have a very conservative estimate, $108,000 in revenue from fines and penalties. And if you look back over several years, you can see we come in at least $100,000 higher than that. So we're really looking at a net cost of $310,000. The other thing to keep in mind is that the district is seeking to purchase a building, which would significantly reduce our annual costs. Our current projections on the build-to-suit option that we're looking at is this annual savings of approximately $300,000 per year, at least for the first 5 years, which means that our annual cost will drop by that amount once we're able to get into that building. And I believe, looking at our significant fund balance, which is over $13 million with an agency with an $8 million budget, that it's an appropriate use of the fund balance to pay for the delta, that increase that we're paying right now to lease our current office space. Looking at the budget, on the expenditure side, we're up by $332,000, mostly due to costs related to salaries and benefits. $298,000 comes from the increases due to salaries and benefits, and this is really the very modest increases that were granted to staff via the SEIU and the VEE labor agreements, along with the management resolution. We're also seeing an increase of $73,000 in services and supplies, and this is large part due to costs we're using for professional services where we're upgrading software programs we utilize. On the fixed asset side, we're down nearly $40,000, and this is because we've replaced most of the older monitoring equipment in the recent past couple fiscal years. On the revenue side, we're looking at an increase of $192,000, and this is a result of two things. First, an increase in permit revenue from the emission fees that are paid at renewal and DMV registration, and both of these can be attributed to the improving economy here in the county. We only have one increment request, and that's $25,000 available for a motor vehicle emission reduction program. We're already receiving inquiries for additional electric vehicle infrastructure. In closing, the proposed budget for 2015-16 shows that our expenditures are going to exceed our revenue. However, with our sizable fund balance, we're going to be able to address this, and we're already working on plans to bring us into balanced budgets, especially after we move into a new building. Your board's approval today would also include approval of our special revenue fund budget, and that's where we handle our pass-through grants, largely the Carl Moyer program. And in that portion of our budget, expenditures and revenues are always balanced. That's all I have. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Members have any questions? Any questions? So, Mr. Villegas, currently we're projecting exceeding our revenue with expenses, but you expect that to even out when we have perhaps possession of our new building and less rent to pay.
Absolutely, and we're looking at. There's no doubt we could probably streamline a few operations, but we're also going to have to look at increasing our revenue, and that's going to be some modest fee increases. And I have some real good news on the front. The House Appropriations Committee did not slash the grants to the air districts. As a matter of fact, while EPA's budget was drastically reduced, the grants passed through the states and local air agencies was not reduced, and instead of $20 million that the president proposed as an increase for state and locals to work on climate change, the House changed that to an increase in $20 million based on air quality areas, issues related to areas that are still having trouble attaining the smog standard. So I think the message we're getting across, when you look at the letter that was sent in your packet to Senator Feinstein, the key people on that letter are the CCs, to the heads of the Republicans. And we're stressing right now that if you need to get permits out in a timely manner, it costs money. If you need to work with industry to create regulations that reduce emissions but are cost effective, it takes time and resources. So I think that message is getting out there.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
going back to the building, Mike, when do you anticipate that's going to be completed? It's going to be a brand new building, right?
Basically, what they've told us is from the...
If it's approved, of course.
If it's approved, it looks like about 18 months, maybe a little more from the time we sign the purchase agreement.
And when do you anticipate, is that closed session item?
It's a closed session item.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Yes.
How much do you anticipate the annual cost for the rent or paying back for the building will be? We've worked it in a way that it will be less than the current rent,
Paying back the building?
or paying for the cost of the building. What will our monthly mortgage be,
We're
or
going
yearly?
to use the fund balance. We're going to pay cash purchase.
Right.
And our operating costs will probably go from, we're paying about $495,000 roughly now for the lease to about $195,000.
So cash should get a discount. That's what happens at the store. So, other questions, comments? Okay, we have a public hearing. I have no speaker cards. People are entitled to speak if they are interested. But seeing none, any more comments from the board? So is there a motion to close the public hearing? Do we need to do that?
Second.
All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. No one's opposed, so let's see.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you very much. Congratulations on another budget passed. Item 12, public hearing regarding adoption of proposed amendments to Rule 74.15.1, boilers, steam generators, process heaters, et cetera, et cetera. Mr. Villegas.
Yeah, I just wanted to introduce Stan Cowan. He's going to give the details on this presentation, but I want your board to know one thing. This is another rule where we're going to achieve over 9 tons per year of nitrogen oxide emissions, and we're bringing a rule before your board that has been vetted with industry and the rest of the community, and we've got a rule that, to my knowledge, has no opposition from the regulated community.
Great.
Stan?
Mr. Cowan.
Thanks, Mike. Chair Ramirez, members of the board, Stan Cowan, Air Quality Engineer. As Mike said, this is a proposal to revise our Rule 74.15.1, which is our small boiler, process heater, steam generators. It ranges from a size range from 1 to 5 million BTUs per hour. I have a short presentation. First, we'll be talking about the regulatory background, really the reason we're revising the rule at this time. The technology that will be used to meet the new standards, which are ultra-low NOx burners. I'll summarize some of the main rule amendments. And as Mike said, this rule will reduce NOx emissions, which is a precursor to ozone, by over 9 tons per year. And the costs are reasonable at a little over $2 per pound. As I said, we did work with EPA and industry. We included all their comments in the proposal, and things went really smoothly. And then I'll summarize. First, the excuse me, regulatory background. Initially, the rule was adopted in 1993 at a retrofit rule, meaning that existing units were retrofitted to meet a limit of 30 parts per million NOx. This was done either with low NOx burners or a system called flue gas recirculation. The last revision was in 2012. That instituted a new limit of 20 parts per million, and that was only for new units between the size ranging 1 and 2 million BTUs per hour. Remember, the rule ranges from 1 to 5, and this new revision in 2012 covered the 1 to 2 million range. We did get comments from the Air Resources Board, along with the EPA. Those are our two oversight agencies. And their staff strongly recommended that we retrofit the rule or modify our rule to include retrofitting existing units to a limit of 12 or 9 ppm NOx. And staff did a cost analysis back in 2012, which showed that these basically retrofits were too expensive. We're looking at up to $1,800 per pound of NOx reduced. And new sources are only required to spend up to $9 per pound. So as you can see, this was a very expensive proposition. But we did commit to ARB to revisit the rule after 2014, which is why we're here today, to revise the rule and to kind of take a second look at it. The California Clean Air Act is the rule revision authority, as you know. It's Health and Safety Code Section 40914. And basically what it says is it requires a strategy to reduce emissions to meet as a non-attainment area for ozone, either a 5% emission reduction or an alternative strategy which includes all feasible measures. And the district, along with every other district in the state of California, all 21 districts, are using the all feasible measure approach because that is the one which is more reasonable. ARB defines all feasible measures in their guidance, and as a minimum, they look at other district rules and see where it's being successfully implemented elsewhere. And this proposal is feasible measure based on its implementation in two districts, the South Coast and San Joaquin districts, and also the availability of a new technology called ultra-low NOx burners, which can reduce the emissions to the proposed standard level. And these are some diagrams or photographs of the new technology, the ultra-low NOx burners. Basically, the air and fuel is pre-mixed, and it lowers the flame temperature, which is one of the main causes of high NOx emissions. Also, it reduces the prompt NOx emissions as well. And this technology has been around for a while. The rules have been in effect in the South Coast, San Joaquin rules for over 10 years. Here's another example of a low NOx burner, or ultra low NOx burner. These are called radiant burners. You can see the flame it kind of radiates rather than the typical fire type flame. And actually, when I was working on permits for the district over about 30 years ago, I actually permitted a unit that had a burner like this back at the Rockwell plant. So this technology they have improved it. Now it's more durable. The proposed rule requirements, we're looking at proposing new standards for the size range from 2 to 5 million BTU. Remember, the rule range is from 1 to 5. We've already adopted in 2012 the emissions from 1 to 2, And these new standards, which cover just new and replacement models, are between the 2 and 5 million range. And here's a table of standards. One of the other major changes to this rule is that it covers other gaseous fuels besides natural gas, including landfill gas, biogas, propane, liquefied petroleum gas, and also produced oil field gas. And there's one other factor that depends on emission factors for NOx, and that is whether the combustion chamber is atmospheric or pressurized. And you can see the first two limits. The natural gas atmospheric is at 12 ppm, whereas the pressurized chamber is at 9 ppm. So you can get a little bit more emission reductions with a pressurized combustion chamber.
Before you leave that chart, can you
Sure.
talk about that? There's a pretty big difference between the biogas and the landfill gas, and why is that?
The landfill gas is it's a lesser quality gas, basically. The biogas is basically mostly digester gas coming off a wastewater treatment facility, so it's fairly uniform, especially relative to landfill gas, which can have many different types of things you put in the landfill, so the quality of the gas isn't as high. These limits for landfill gas and biogas are based on the South Coast Rule 1146.1 limits on existing units. And we're just proposing, these are for new and replacement models.
Okay.
So that's the reason for the difference. In addition, we're not proposing any changes to the existing limits at 20 ppm for the 1 to 2 million range. Other proposed changes include reducing the source testing frequency from every 2 years to every 4 years for the newer units, new replacement units. This will reduce compliance costs, which we're always looking for ways to reduce costs as part of our proposal. We can do this because these units are still subject to annual screening requirements, which are much less expensive. We're also establishing a hard, fast deadline for annual screening at no later than the anniversary date of the last source test. There currently isn't a hard deadline in the rule. This will make it easier to enforce the screening provisions. In addition, we're clarifying the reporting requirements to include the types of emissions that need to be reported, including NOx and carbon monoxide emissions on an annual basis. We did a workshop, and we did receive comments from both EPA and industry. We are receiving a lot more comments from EPA on our rule development, so that's good. We did not get any comments from ARB on this proposal. EPA had two comments. First had to do with the limits for landfill gas and biogas. Basically, they wanted us to look at other fuels besides natural gas. And these limits, the first two are from South Coast Rule 1146.1. The LPG limit or propane limit is based on manufacturer specifications for new replacement units. The other comment from EPA, initially we exempted portable units that were running on propane. After an evaluation, we limited this exemption just to one type of unit, a portable oil well dewaxing heater running on propane that was unable to meet the 30 ppm limit without a major retrofit, which would have exceeded, I think, $9.50 per pound retrofit. So that we limited that exemption. The comments from the Western States Petroleum Association, they also had two comments. One we've already talked about, reduction of source testing frequency for the newer units. This will save compliance costs because the source testing equipment or the source test vans are very expensive, several $1,000s to do a source test. And so this will save some money for compliance. The other comment had to do with the limits for produced oil field gas. They were proposing 15 ppm and 12 pressurized. Since these numbers seem reasonable to us, we thought we would include them. There aren't any other districts that regulate this type of fuel. As far as emission reductions and cost effectiveness, as Mike said, it's a significant reduction, over 9 tons per year from replacement, so it happens over a period of time. The cost effectiveness, which we do for every rule revision, assumes a $10,000 additional cost for the newer units, and that comes out to about $2.30 per pound, which is quite cost effective. In summary, it's a significant NOx reduction to help us in our plan toward reaching attainment of the ozone standard. We're required as a non-attainment district to adopt all feasible measures by state law. We believe this is feasible and reasonable based on its implementation in other districts, in particular San Joaquin and the South Coast District. It's cost-effective measure for new and replacement units. We're also reducing compliance costs by reducing source testing frequency while maintaining the annual monitoring requirements. We did include all comments from EPA and industry, and the advisory committee recommended this adoption unanimous vote. And finally, if you decide to adopt this proposal, then you would need to propose an exemption from CEQA based on a categorical exemption and adopt the legislative findings per state law. And that's the end of my remarks. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I do. Just how confident do you feel that we don't need to test more often than every 4 years the new equipment? Is that I know I see that Western States is who made the request. Why did you originally have 2 years there?
We currently have that provision in the rule now for the smaller boilers from 1 to 2 million. So we have some operating experience with that, and we're showing that for the most part there's compliance, and we still have the annual monitoring that they do on their own. So we have a record if they're having problems, and we're very good at enforcing this provision as well.
So we're comfortable going to the 4
Yes.
years. Thanks.
Yeah.
Other comments, questions? I have one question, Mr. Cowan. Could you just, for anybody who might be watching this and doesn't understand what NOx is and what the impact is on air quality, just a real brief description?
Certainly. Yeah, NOx is one of the precursors. It mixes with hydrocarbons, or otherwise known as ROC, in the atmosphere under sunlight, photochemical reactions, and that's what creates the ozone issue that we have. So it's a precursor emission. It's not. It reacts chemically in the atmosphere with the hydrocarbons to form the ozone, which we're trying to reduce to meet the standard.
Thank you. Other questions? Well, this is a public hearing, and again, I have no speaker cards. So, without any more to do, I have a motion to close the public hearing. Second.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. So, what's the pleasure of the board on this?
Well, I'll move staff recommendations.
Is there a second? So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion that those standards pass. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Cohen. Next item, receive and file the comprehensive audit for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014. Mr. Villegas.
Yes, attached to the board letter is the district's comprehensive annual financial report and our single audit report for fiscal year 2013-14. The reports are a product of a comprehensive audit done by our external auditor, Vavrinic, Trine, and Day. The audit did not find any material weaknesses in our financial systems. As the executive officer responsible for these systems, I'm very satisfied with the audit results. I would like to commend Loni Macareg, our fiscal officer, and Nancy Mendoza, our manager of fiscal and administrative services, for running such a tight ship. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions by members?
Yeah, do we have the auditors here? A representative?
No, we don't.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Would you like to have the auditors here? Okay.
But the staff did a good job,
Yes.
right?
They're very thorough. And we use the same auditor that the county uses just because they're familiar with that financial management system, and they've already audited the county side, so when they come to us, things go pretty smoothly.
And that's important, yeah.
Yes, it is, since we're using the same software.
So they're going to raise their hand here, so. We're doing a good job. Thank you.
Other questions by board members? I have a question about audit. I have a little bit of experience with audits, and I read it. It looks great. But of course, audits are always, the reports always depend on the information they get, and I know our staff does a great job. But in other organizations I've been associated with, there is a policy of changing auditors after a period of time because people do get cozy. I've seen it happen. Everything looks great here, but what's our policy on that, if any?
We follow along with the county, and I was aware of that policy. With some agencies, they tend to, about 5 years, they make a switch. And it seems that they had a contract started in 2006, and it was extended out to 2010, and then it's been yearly since that date. And, if the county makes a change, we'll make a change with them, or if you'd like us to make a change sooner, we could look into that. I have to admit, with this auditing firm, we've been very satisfied. We were with KPMG before, and being a smaller agency, they just seem to be very unresponsive. Our $40,000 contract didn't seem to keep a fire lit under them to get the documents back to us in a timely manner. That's my only concern.
Do you have a comment?
We do have a policy every 5 years of reviewing the contracts with our external auditors. We did, in fact, renew with them for a second 5 years. It is actually on an annual basis. And what we did when we decided to extend for the additional year, we required them to provide us with different staffing. So we have different managers on site and different staff auditors on site as well. So we kept our partner just to have that continuity, but the actual boots on the ground doing the audit are different people from the prior year. And then we'll go forward with the switch in the financial system from the upgrade from 2.2 VCFMS 2.2 to 310 for this fiscal year. We've decided to keep them also for that continuity because they know our operations, and then we'll go out for another RFP probably in 16-17.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
But Michael, then using the county auditor saves us money too, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's important. Otherwise, if we get our own, then
Yeah, exactly. Our
There
costs
goes something.
would raise.
See me later for when things go haywire. But anyway, it looks great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any other comments?
Just in general, when we're doing the official adoption of the audit, I think it's appropriate to have the auditor here.
Okay.
So I'd like to have the auditor here in the future. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you. Other comments? What's the pleasure of the board? So receive and file. Receive and
Second.
file. So, do we need a motion on that? If we're receiving and filing? Okay. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Thank you very much. Thank you, staff, for doing a great job for us. The next item is request to cancel the July 14th meeting.
Move to approve.
You can come. That's
We
okay.
debate this.
I'll second it. I also would just like to compliment, I know I live the closest. It's easy to come, but today was not an easy day for all the APCD people to come. And so for everybody that made the long drive here, my compliments to give us a quorum to
That would be especially
to get
Mr.
business done
Pollard.
for Mr. Villegas.
And actually, I wanted to thank the six because this means, getting our budget adopted is not an optional item, and coming here today is really
So from
important for us. and we
1,000
really
oaks and more
appreciate
park.
it.
Moore Park. What when you mean?
10,000.
Banana splits in back, right?
Okay, we're going to, that's approved, so thank you very much. We have the correspondence agenda. I assume everybody's read it. Thank you very much for following up on that, Mr. Villegas.
Move to receive and file.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to retreat to closed session to have a conference with the real property negotiators for this agency, and that's pursuant to government code that's mentioned in our agenda. So
Ask if there's going to be a
will we be reopening to report any action? Do you know, Mr. Villegas?
no. announcements?
No, there won't be any announcements.
So we won't need to readjourn, to reopen into open session?
No, there will be no need.
All right, thank you.
Closed session, huh?
Thank you all for coming. Okay, everything's a little bit different.